and we'll hand over to Kazumi Ogawa, who will be moderating this session, Director of UNMAS. Kazumi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Namrita, as always. So today I'm very pleased to be introducing Plenary 4, which is a donor dialogue. We're at a critical inflection point for MindAction. I think that you all are aware of this, but we have on one hand the scale and complexity of the contamination, which is increasing faster than our collective capacity to be able to respond to these. At the same time, communities that are living amongst these mines and explosive remnants of wars, they can't wait for, they can't afford these delays, right? They can't wait for the assistance to come. So in order to protect lives, in order to enable humanitarian access, unlock pathways for recovery and development, we need, as I think collectively as a community, to be able to find ways to identify predictable, flexible, strategically aligned funding. So, to us, I think as both donor and recipient, the shared challenge and the opportunity is to ensure that resources match the realities on the ground, that our priorities are in line with yours, and that they both collectively reflect immediate humanitarian imperatives, long-term stabilization needs. And so the sustainability of it is very important as well. We wanted to have this donor dialogue this afternoon to allow MindAction donors to share their priorities and perspectives of the sector as well. We hope that it will inspire an interactive exchange with attendees, and so please, those that are in the room, have your questions ready, including national directors to ask questions and to share their own perspectives on funding and capacity. I'm very pleased to have on the podium with me today representatives of the United States, Switzerland, and Norway. They've been, I think that they represent some of the top donors that we've had in the MindAction sector for years. There are other key donors that you've seen in the past day and a half and that you'll see in the coming day and a half. For example, during Plenary 1, we heard from Japan, who sees MindAction as a strategic investment and is a leading proponent of the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus, the HDP Nexus. They like to promote integrated response to protracted crisis, basically bridging humanitarian development, cooperation, and peace building. In Plenary 2, earlier in the session, we learned that more efficient land release methodologies championed by France when it was the MASC chair, that those can streamline costs as well. During Plenary 5 today, you will hear from the UK, which is the current MASC chair, on their efforts to diversify funding and to explore outcomes-based mechanisms to attract private sector funding. All of that to say, it's not just in this forum that we'll be discussing donor perspectives, donor priorities, but this is specifically, I think, for the next 1 hour or so, this is what we'll be focusing on. So I'm hoping that we can have a as frank a dialogue as we can have in this room in terms of the priorities and ideas on how to maximize the impact that's available, of the funding that's available for MindAction. To start this dialogue, I'm pleased to introduce right in the middle Ms. Karen Chandler. She's the Director of the Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs, representing the United States. We have Ambassador Tony here right next to me. As you all, I'm sure, know, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations and to the other organizations in Geneva, and the Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the Conference on Disarmament. Welcome, Ambassador. And then far at the other end of this podium, we have Ambassador Endresen, who's the Permanent Representative of the Republic of Norway to the United Nations Office in Geneva. I myself am also very much looking forward to hearing your perspectives and priorities. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Karen Chandler. She's a career member of the Senior Executive Service in the United States government. She's responsible for programs in her, and please correct me as well, but she's responsible for programs that address the threat of landmines and unexploded ordnance and strengthen United States national capacity by I'm having a problem, sorry. She wants to strengthen United States national security by preventing illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons. I don't know why that was so difficult to say.
It's enough.
But welcome to the discussion. Perhaps I could ask you, Ms. Chandler, How has the U.S. approach to demining assistance evolved over the past year? And if you could tell us a little bit about your priorities from the United States.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, and I'm honored to join this panel. Thank you so much. And thank you to the UNMAS and to the Swiss government for hosting us. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, I am Karen Chandler, and I work at the U.S. Department of State. My office serves as the focal point for the United States Conventional Weapons Destruction Program, and we have worked with many of you around the world, and I'm thankful for your work. I want to be very direct with you today. I know there has been a lot of uncertainty in the sector over the past year, so I hope to provide a candid account of where we stand and why this work still matters. Let me begin by emphasizing that the United States remains the single largest contributor to global demining efforts, and we continue to place great value on this important work. Last year alone, we provided over $385 million in conventional weapons destruction assistance worldwide. That is the largest one-year total for such assistance by the United States ever. Under President Trump's America First foreign policy, we are taking a more targeted, strategic approach that puts American interests and the American taxpayer first. The 2025 National Security Strategy is explicit. U.S. foreign policy must serve U.S. national interests. Every dollar we spend abroad must be justified to the American taxpayer. I recognize this framing may be more direct than you've had in the past, but I suspect many of you apply the same test to your own governments. Our conventional weapons destruction program achieves our strategic objectives through both demining and weapons stockpile security. These are not charity. These are strategic uses of U.S. taxpayer funding that must ultimately benefit the American people. Demining clears land for infrastructure and the development of agriculture and critical minerals that powers economies. It allows refugees to go home. It prevents terrorists from harvesting explosives to build new weapons. It creates conditions for American businesses to invest. For example, in Ukraine today, we have trained nearly 2,500 deminers who have cleared 672 square miles of contaminated land. That is 100 times the city of Geneva. In that area, deminers have removed more than 260,000 mines and pieces of unexploded ordnance. Our strategy there is exactly what this sector has long advocated: build national capacity, transfer skills and equipment, and then exit. The Ukrainian government now pays salaries and expenses for the deminers we trained. They are running the training school. They are clearing the land. We help them build something that will outlast U.S. assistance. That is what sustainable mine action looks like. Weapons stockpile security is the other side of the coin. Unsecured munitions flow to drug traffickers, criminal gangs, and armed groups that destabilize entire regions. In our own hemisphere, the United States is helping Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, and countries across the Caribbean secure their weapons stockpiles. This assistance is closing the pipeline that fuels violence, illegal migration, and the trafficking of narcotics and weapons that end up threatening American communities. I want to highlight a few other places where our assistance is making a difference. In Laos and Vietnam, our cooperative demining efforts are honoring the past by clearing U.S. origin unexploded ordnance while driving economic and agricultural development for future generations. It is a demonstration that the United States is a trustworthy long-term partner. Our demining assistance is also supporting the Kuala Lumpur peace accords brokered by President Trump between Cambodia and Thailand, a concrete deliverable from U.S. diplomacy. And in Angola, our demining efforts along the Lobito corridor are opening new opportunities for American investment while also helping Angola build a resilient economy. In the process, this is breaking aid dependency and building a stronger partner. I want to close by making a quick point about burden sharing, which has come up frequently this week. As the President, Secretary of State, and others have repeatedly said, America First does not mean America alone. It means America will not carry disproportionate weight indefinitely. We continue to support projects that support American interests in a results-driven model, coordinated on a bilateral basis with host nations that share the burden with us. And we will continue to advocate for other governments to apply the same stringent views on effectiveness and efficiency in the projects they support, so the sector can avoid bloated international bureaucracies that don't make communities safer or more prosperous. The United States wants to work with others who will share this load. That is an invitation, not a withdrawal. We want implementers who build national capacity, not dependency. We want other assistance providing governments to match our investment. And we want host nations who take ownership of their own security, prosperity, and future by sustaining the gains we provide and building on them with their own resources. That is not a new standard. It is the standard this sector has aspired to for 30 years. The United States remains committed to making every future dollar count for the American people and for the communities you serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chandler. Before handing over to Ambassador Tony, I would like to thank you, first of all, for the generosity of the Swiss government in hosting this, I think, very valuable, invaluable event, and for the reception yesterday. I think we all very much enjoyed the Geneva wine and juice and water, which is supposed to be the best in the world. So thank you very much for that. I also wanted to thank you, just taking off of my facilitator hat, your support also to the United Nations in providing the in-kind support. You know, that's something maybe that will come out in this discussion as well, but I was reminded by Ambassador Anderson that said, you know, we're not just the checkbook. And I think that we owe it to you to remember that as well, that it's not just the money, which is invaluable in terms of implementing our programs, but it's also other elements that you would be able to contribute to the Mine Action community. Switzerland, I know, has an action plan for 2023 to 26, and that you're currently, I understand, in the process of consulting in terms of the future action plan. In your current plan, you have the normative framework, humanitarian mine action on the ground, and innovation as your main fields of action. Could you tell us a little bit about how you're seeing the next 4 years or 5 years?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ogawa, and thank you very much for inviting me on this panel with I'm very privileged to sit with distinguished co-panelists. Yes, thank you for the questions that you have asked. This is exactly the points that I will raise in my remarks on the panel. So the mine action is, generally speaking, a priority of the Swiss foreign policy and disarmament policy of Switzerland, as it is outlined in our action plan for 2023-2026. And now we are in the phase of reviewing and having a new mine action plan. So we support mine action across the 5 pillars, the traditional pillars, meaning clearance, risk education, victim assistance, stockpile destruction, and also advocacy. Switzerland has defined, as you mentioned, rightly, very rightly, the 3 priority areas. The first one, this is about promoting the normative framework. We know all that the normative framework has been put under serious pressure these last few years. And for the first time ever, we saw states withdrawing from the 2 conventions, Ottawa and Oslo. The reports also of the use of anti-personnel mines and cluster munitions have increased, as well as also the numbers of victims of those weapons. Despite those setbacks, for Switzerland, this is very important to stay committed to the normative framework and to promote and support its implementation by all the actors and also its universalization. And I would like also here to mention that we are very committed also to continue to support the hosting of the 2 ISUs of the 2 conventions here in Geneva by the GICHD, and also to continue our support to the Geneva Center for demining. But also Switzerland is taking some function in the coordination committees of the 2 conventions, and this is also a way to stay engaged for the promotion of the 2 and the implementation of the obligation of the 2 conventions. Field action number 2, this is about humanitarian mine action on the ground. So the area contaminated by explosive remnants of war has been over the last years on the rise again after slowly decreasing over decades. So it looks like Sisyphean work. We are bringing the boulder up the hill, and then due to new wars and new conflict, again, it's rolling back down, and we have new areas to decontaminate. But nevertheless, every clear square meters that can be given back to civilian use facilitates the return of displaced population, increases also the safety and security, and enables also sustainable development. So in light of this increased contamination and the rising victim numbers, risk education and victim assistance are more crucial than ever. Switzerland is proud to have increased its funding to mine action once again in 2025, and that means that we have reached a level of about $50 million in 2025, and we'll probably have the same amount in 2026. We fund projects in 11 regions, and second also 17 experts to 8 contexts around the world. So it's really very much responding to the point that not only funding, but also trying to bring experts to the field with a lot of expertise. Third field of action, this is about innovation, and I know that during the conference we have been speaking a lot about how can we further innovate in the area of demining. Technological innovation, we know, have great potential for mine action. However, the solutions that are designed sometimes in the labs prove to be not so efficient when they are applied in the field. So our action in this area is really to make sure that innovation for the mine action sector with a particular view, will have a particular connection with the practitioners in the field. I come back now to the funding modalities, because this is quite specific probably to my country. Switzerland supports mine action through different channels. First, we try to link our action in development and development assistance with mine action, so this is the first way. We always try to put mine action in the context of our assistance abroad. Secondly, we try also to link mine action to achieve peace-building objectives. So if we are involved in a specific context with a mediating role or facilitating role or support for a peace process, we also try to bring experts and to fund programs of demining. For instance, Switzerland funds mine action in Colombia through a project involving former combatants, so we contribute to the reintegration of the combatant in the civil society. Finally, also, Switzerland deploys experts in mine action, usually to UN missions or to UNMAS. And so that means we do not have dedicated fund stream for mine action, but this is always linked to a specific foreign policy priority. At the same time, we know that we should remain flexible where needed and where also useful, including also the capacity to act rapidly where the needs are discovered. What can we expect also going forward? You mentioned the preparation of the next action plan on demining. So we are working on that. We know that we have also to adapt our action plan to the geopolitical changes in the world, the changes in the sector of demining, but also to take into account the different lessons learned from the participation of our participation in mine action, but also notably regarding the context where Switzerland is the most engaged in demining. This is Ukraine. So we will, of course, take the lessons from what we have learned also in the collaboration with Ukraine. We believe that the predictability as a donor is one of the strengths of Switzerland, but also our principled position on the importance of the humanitarian disarmaments and the standing of the two conventions. So this is basically what I would like to say. Maybe to react shortly to the Slido survey. I think very importantly, it was mentioned, humanitarian action is prominently mentioned as one of the priorities. This is true. I think we could and we should act more in the prevention of the conflict. It will mean less work than on the side of demining. And the question of humanitarian access is probably very important. And both action diplomatic are prevention of conflicts, but also humanitarian access. This is something which requires diplomatic agency. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Tony. In fact, you've read my mind, because I was going to invite the panelists to consider the Slido survey, which, you know, the overwhelming people that were in the room that were able to vote had said that reducing civilian harm and enabling urgent humanitarian access, the humanitarian impact, was one of the top priorities when allocating mine action funding. Ambassador Andresen, first of all, let me thank you for also to the government of Norway for being such a strong supporter traditionally to mine action, and also for those of you that have been coming into the plenary rooms, the short videos that you see projected as we're walking in, those were a part of the UNMAS Film Festival in commemoration of the International Day for Mine Action, which was on April 4th. The film festival itself is available digitally on the UNMAS website, but what I wanted to say was, with the generous support of the Norwegian government, we were able to have an in-person mini film festival as well. The films are all between 2 minutes to 10 minutes apart, a piece, on Sudan, South Sudan, Syria, the occupied Palestinian territories, and Ukraine. Very interesting, very diverse, and I promise you it's not just a promotion of UNMAS. So if you're interested, I would encourage you all to take a look. We have some postcards as well that have the QR codes in the back, so please keep an eye out for those. But thank you very much, Ambassador, for your support in terms of that. If I can speak for my sister agencies in the UN system as well, I know that we also benefit very much from the support and the interaction that we have with Norwegian People's Aid. So thank you. I understand, Mr. Ambassador, that the Norwegian government is preparing a white paper on Norway's development assistance. And I think that when we think about that, you know, this provides an opportunity to engage with the mine action professional community on how to make the greatest possible difference, both, as you've said, through the financial, but also political support, intellectual support, if I might. Mr. Ambassador, how do you foresee the mine action sector in the future? Oh.
This is such a big room, even I need a mic. Thank you very much. Great to be here and great to be with you and great to share the stage with very generous and long-standing partners of this important file. You know, mine action used to be about clearing historic contamination, about clearing legacy contamination, but it's of course now in the current conflict landscape, very much like you said, Ambassador Tony, a stone that we keep pushing up the hill that keeps tumbling down on us. So there is a lot of needs out there, and of course we are all aware that the funding is dwindling. So I'm all the more grateful that some countries stay the course. And we intend to do so. We are an important donor to this file, has been for a long time. And we were able to support humanitarian mine action with $57.5 million US last year, distributed to more than 25 countries along all the pillars of mine action. So we are invested financially, but we're also invested, like you said, very kind of you, intellectually, and on the policy part. We want to make sure that the policies are right, and we know from all kinds of humanitarian interventions that this is, you know, it is made to measure. You need to tailor-make interventions for them to be effective. Hence also our emphasis on locally led responses and on gender perspectives into also mine action. This is a reflection of an important principle for us, but it's also importantly, I think, something that makes the humanitarian action more effective if we do pursue gender and inclusive policies when we do our interventions. As to the level of funding, we have just put out a new multi-year call for proposal for support, and our aim is to stay and prevail at a high level of funding. But like it has been said, we also need to demonstrate the effects of what we do and bring out the good stories. I think, thank you for the film festival. I think we can say, for all of us in this room, have you met once or twice victims of explosive remnants? That stays with you, and it's something that boldens or underpins the support in our populations for continued engagement. Let me just touch upon one small piece that is also important to us. We are working currently on a feasibility study for establishing a voluntary trust fund under the Mine Ban Convention. And this is a work that is assessing for the time being what can we do to bring funds available to mines that are struggling to do the last mile in their demining and that have difficulties finding other funds. There are lots of funds out there, and we are in principle not in favor of creating new ones, but we think maybe here there is an actual need, and that's what we're trying to find out, to be able to bring more states over the finish line, let's say, in completion. Let me end by saying that I think you also alluded to that there are all other parts of our foreign policy that is important in this bigger context of conflict and conflict prevention. Clearly, we need to bring humanitarian needs down, and the only way to do that is to invest more, I think, in mediation, in conflict prevention, and indeed, when conflict do exist, in humanitarian access and all this. And I'm proud to say that Switzerland, United States, and Norway, we're all in that business in different ways, albeit. But I think that's a very important takeaway in today's pretty grim picture, that we need to invest in conflict prevention and in solution of conflicts, because we simply cannot cope sustainably with the needs, right? I think we can all agree. The white paper that you were talking to, we are indeed looking at the white paper for our development policy. The work is in an early stage, but it is essentially a result of the fact that while we want to maintain our ODA at around 1% per GDP of GDP, we see so many changes in the funding landscape around us. So we have to ask the question: what does that mean for what we are financing when a lot of other donors are for reasons that I can understand and appreciate, stepping down? So that's sort of the question that we try to answer in this white paper. But again, thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to sit with other staunch supporters of Mine Action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. On behalf of the United Nations Mine Action Service and all of the different Mine Action partners, the people in the community, I'd like to thank you for your time and for agreeing to sit on the hot seat, as they say, and responding to all of our questions. I think that collaboration is important. You had mentioned that. It's important, I think, the takeaway that I have is that it's important also when we look at Mine Action, that we're looking at it as a part of a larger structure, whether it's a national priority of the donor countries, whether it's a national priority, a priority of the donor countries for the country itself, the recipient country, and this idea of national ownership, local ownership, is quite important. And I think that as the United Nations, need to remember that it's not for our benefit that we're asking and carrying out these programs, but it's so that eventually we can hand it over and make the country itself a stronger government and implementer of programs. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that has participated as well. And we continue our discussions. Have a good rest of the day.